The machine is running. The machine is running. What financial freedom actually looks like. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Matthew 25:23. I want to tell you what a Tuesday morning looks like when the machine is running. My alarm does not go off. I wake when I am rested. I grab some coffee, sit with my Bible for a while, and pray. My phone does not contain any unanswered texts from an employer wondering where I am. There is no commute. There is no boss. Overnight, while I slept, 6 families paid their rent into accounts I will review later this morning. A small dividend from a high-yield ETF was deposited into my brokerage account and automatically reinvested. The S&P 500 index fund that my daughter's Roth IRA holds grew by a fraction of a percent, a fraction that, compounded over the next 40 years, is worth more than most people earn in a lifetime of work. I will teach a Taekwondo class this evening at my church, not because I have to, because I want to. That distinction between what you must do and what you choose to do is the entire point of everything we have covered in these pages. What you have built. If you have worked through this book honestly, not just read it, but done the exercises, made the calculations, opened the accounts, and begun the disciplines, you have built something real. Let me name what it is. You have built a foundation, an emergency fund that converts catastrophes into inconveniences, a zero-balance relationship with high-interest debt, or at least a clear and executable plan to reach one, a budget that reflects your values rather than your impulses, a net worth number, whatever it is, that you know precisely. You have built a compound interest machine, a Roth IRA with automated monthly contributions flowing into a low-cost index fund. Dollar cost averaging happening automatically, whether the market is up or down, whether you're paying attention or not. A machine that works in the background, relentlessly and without complaint, regardless of what else is happening in your life. You have built tax intelligence. You understand that the IRS tax code is not primarily a system of obligations. It is a roadmap of incentives. You know the difference between ordinary income taxed at 37% and long-term capital gains taxed at 15% or even 0%. You know what depreciation does for a rental property owner, what a 1031 exchange can accomplish, and why a Roth account is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools ever written into law. You have built a retirement with a plan, not a hope. You know your target number, you know your withdrawal rate, you know the Social Security calculation and what it will and will not cover, and you know the specific pitfalls, sequence of returns risk, RMD exposure, IRMAA surcharges that derail retirement plans that look perfectly adequate on paper. And if you have moved into real estate, you have built a passive income stream, perhaps just the beginning of one, that is doing something no paycheck can do. Generating money while you sleep, appreciating in value while a tenant pays down your debt, and sheltering its income from taxation through depreciation that the stock market cannot match. That is what you have built, not an empire, a machine. And machines, properly maintained, run indefinitely, the gap between knowledge and wealth. Here is the one thing I most want you to understand as you close this book, because it is the place where almost every promising financial journey ends prematurely. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by knowledge. It is filled by action, taken repeatedly, over time. You now know more about personal finance than the majority of Americans will ever know. You understand compound interest, tax-advantaged accounts, index fund investing, passive income, and retirement sequencing at a level that most people never reach. That knowledge has real value, but it has no value whatsoever until it changes what you do. Napoleon Hill wrote it in 1937, and it has been true ever since. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only through application. The person who reads this book and opens a Roth IRA this week is further ahead than the person who reads every personal finance book ever written and never opens one. Do not wait until you understand everything. Act now on what you understand today, and let the understanding deepen as you go. The disciplines that never stop. Financial freedom is not a destination you arrive at and then abandon the practices that got you there. The habits that build wealth are the same habits that maintain it. Let me remind you of the ones that matter most. Pay yourself first. Before discretionary spending has a chance to consume your surplus, automate a transfer to savings and investment. This is the oldest financial instruction in any text I know of. Proverbs 6's instruction to study the ant, and it is still the most reliable. Stay invested. The most dangerous thing you can do in a volatile market is leave it. Hartford Funds research showed that missing just the 10 best trading days over a 30-year period cut final returns by more than half. The best days and the worst days cluster together. Stay in, do nothing. The machine will recover. It has always recovered. Keep learning. Charlie Munger said he had never met a truly wise person who did not read constantly. Warren Buffett reportedly devotes 80% of his working day to reading. The correlation between intellectual investment and financial outcome is not coincidental. Give generously. This may seem like an odd instruction in a chapter about building wealth, but I include it deliberately because it is foundational to the right relationship with money. Luke 12:34 says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Giving breaks the psychological grip of accumulation. It reorients money from something you cling to into something you deploy. Money, happiness, and the science of giving. Harvard professor and social scientist Arthur Brooks has spent decades studying the intersection of money and happiness. His research identifies 5 things people can do with money: buy stuff, buy experiences, buy time, give it away, or save it. 4 of them reliably increase happiness. 1 does not: buying stuff. Our brains are wired to pursue material possessions as a signal of status and success, an evolutionary holdover from when visible wealth signaled dominance in the hierarchy. The problem is that it doesn't work. Stuff is forgotten. Experiences are not. Brooks and his wife debated spending their anniversary money on a beach vacation versus a couch. The couch won on logic. The beach won the argument. Decades later, he remembers every detail of the beach and nothing about the couch. Buying experiences. Experiences with people you love produce what Brooks calls permanent memories. The neuroscience is clear. We reconstruct experiential memories repeatedly over time, and each reconstruction reframes the current context of our lives. $1 spent on a meaningful experience at 55 produces more total return in memory dividends than the same dollar spent on a possession that depreciates the moment it is purchased. Buying time. Delegating tasks you dislike, lawn care, house cleaning, anything that consumes hours you would rather spend differently, is one of the most efficient happiness purchases available. The condition: use the recovered time on something meaningful, not on Instagram, giving it away. This is the one that surprises people most. Brooks's research, going back 25 years, consistently shows that people who give more money away get richer. For every dollar given to charity, approximately $1.60 returns in subsequent years, not through any mystical mechanism, but because giving trains the mind toward problem-solving, generosity, and effectiveness. People who give are perceived as more trustworthy, more attractive, and more capable. They earn more. The Book of Proverbs arrived at the same conclusion 3,000 years earlier. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Proverbs 11:24. Saving it. Every dollar saved buys happiness through the progress principle. Human beings are wired not for arrival at goals, but for movement toward them. Watching a savings balance grow, paying down a debt, moving incrementally toward financial freedom, each of these activates the dopamine pathways in ways that consumption never can. Progress is its own reward. Regress, debt, overspending, moving backward, is its own punishment. Brooks' research also confirms what this book has argued from the beginning. Debt is not merely a financial burden, it is a psychological one. Student debt lowers life satisfaction. Car debt tanks it. Credit card debt, in Brooks' words, is catastrophic for life satisfaction. The math argument for staying in debt, I can earn more investing than I pay in interest, misses the point entirely. You cannot run a foot race well while carrying an enormous backpack. Financial freedom is not just an economic calculation. It is the removal of a weight you may not even know you are carrying until it is gone. Protect your family. Insurance, estate documents, beneficiary designations, these are the infrastructure of financial responsibility. Your will, your healthcare directive, your power of attorney, your transfer on death deed, these are the final act of stewardship, ensuring that what you have built serves the people you love on your terms, with minimum friction and maximum tax efficiency. The two numbers that define your financial life. Among all the formulas and figures in this book, two numbers define the shape of your financial life more than any others. The first is the date you start. Every month of delay compounds into thousands of dollars of foregone wealth. Every month of action compounds in the other direction. The person who begins at 22 and saves modestly will almost always outperform the person who begins at 42 and saves aggressively. Time is the one resource that cannot be purchased, borrowed, or recovered. Use it. The second is the gap between your income and your spending. Wealth is not primarily a function of how much you earn. It is a function of how much of what you earn you keep, invest, and allow to compound. The millionaires documented in Thomas Stanley's The Millionaire Next Door were not, on average, high earners. They were people who lived below their means, consistently and deliberately, for decades. The gap between income and spending is the raw material of financial freedom. Make it as wide as you can, on leaving something behind. I want to end where this book's deeper purpose begins, not with balance sheets and withdrawal rates, but with the question of legacy. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Not merely to his children, to his grandchildren. That is a multi-generational vision of stewardship, and it stands in direct contrast to the pattern most American families are living, each generation starting from scratch, or worse, starting from behind. The inheritance you leave is not only money, it is the wisdom, the example, and the structure. A child who grows up watching their parent invest deliberately, give generously, avoid debt, and speak about money with clarity and purpose has received something more valuable than any dollar amount. They have received a model, and models, more than instructions, shape the financial behavior of the next generation. But the financial inheritance matters too. A paid-off rental property, passed to your heirs with a stepped-up cost basis, a Roth IRA with decades of tax-free compounding, an index fund that has quietly doubled every 7 years for 30 years and now represents something extraordinary, wealth created from patience, not luck. These are achievable, not for a handful of exceptional people, for ordinary people, people exactly like you, who understood a few principles well enough to act on them consistently over years without stopping. The goal is not to die rich. The goal is to live free, give generously, and leave something behind that outlasts you. Ordinary people, extraordinary machines, real stories of financial freedom. The principles in this book are not theory. They are being lived out right now by people who started with nothing, or less than nothing, and built something worth leaving behind. Here is what their stories have in common. They had powerful reasons. Every person who achieved financial freedom could tell you exactly why they were doing it. One couple paid off $50,000 in debt in 2 years, no eating out, no vacations, no gifts for 2 Christmases, because they had written down their short-term, intermediate, and long-term dreams and committed to a specific plan. Another man, seeing his first child born into debt, resolved that his second would not be. The reason preceded everything else. Without it, the sacrifice is just deprivation. With it, the sacrifice is a down payment on freedom. They started from genuine hardship. One grew up in a trailer home in Minnesota, remembering what it felt like when his parents couldn't pay the heating bill. Another was sent to an orphanage in Taiwan because his family couldn't afford to feed him. One worked at McDonald's for $4.25 an hour as a teenager because his parents gave him nothing. The most common thing these individuals said about their early poverty was not that it held them back. It was that it gave them a relationship with money that most people who grew up comfortably never develop. They saved at rates that hurt. If the amount of money you're saving each month doesn't hurt, you're not saving enough. One couple reached a 70 to 80% savings rate in their final years before financial independence. Another sold his house, sold his car, rented a room in someone else's home, and replaced the car with a bicycle because every dollar needed to go toward debt elimination first. They did not wait until it was convenient. They made it work with what they had. They invested simply and consistently. Not one of them credited a brilliant stock pick or a perfectly timed market entry. The most common portfolio description was also the simplest. Index funds, zero management, nothing to pay attention to. One described a diversified mix of index funds, real estate, and low-risk assets. Another said he invested in his 401k and a Roth IRA throughout his corporate years and let compounding do the rest. The complexity came in the earning and saving. The investing itself was deliberate and boring, exactly as it should be. They thought generationally. Nearly every person in these stories spoke about their children before they spoke about themselves. Roth IRAs opened for teenagers. Custodial accounts and 529s funded before the children knew they existed. Children brought along to maintain rental properties so they would understand where money comes from and what work looks like. A mommy and daddy bank, paying interest on a 10-year-old's savings so he could experience compounding before he knew the word for it. The goal, said one father simply, is that my children do better than me. That is not ambition. That is stewardship. They redefined what freedom looks like. One achieved financial independence at 34 and became a stay-at-home father. Another describes her current life as a mompreneur, building a business entirely around being present for her children. A third said, he used to work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and now cannot imagine that life. None of them described freedom as a number on a spreadsheet. They described it as showing up to their children's events without fear, coaching Little League, being present. If you're able as a parent to go to any event freely without worrying about getting fired, said one, that is financial freedom. That is millionaire status. These are ordinary people. They did not inherit wealth, win the lottery, or invent an app. They made a decision, one clear, early, painful decision to live differently than the culture around them for long enough that the math took over. The machine does not build itself, but as their stories confirm, it is not complicated to build. And once it is running, it runs for a very long time. These stories were taken from a Business Insider YouTube interview titled Money Lessons from Parents Saving Millions for Their Children. One final instruction. In the first chapter of this book, I described sitting in a Chicago cubicle in 1998 with $100 to my name and the quiet conviction that there was more. There was. But the more did not arrive through a windfall or a lucky break. It arrived one deliberate decision at a time, over more than 20 years, built on principles that were available to anyone who bothered to learn them. You have now learned them. What comes next is yours to decide. The machine does not build itself, but it is not complicated to build, and once it is running, it runs for a very long time. Warren Buffett said it simply and finally, and I have been returning to it ever since. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. That is not a threat. It is an invitation. The question, the only remaining question, is whether you will accept it. The best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Go build the machine.